Okay, then you loving ice cream would be loving to you then, correct?
Sure, that's selfish
So
love
that would be
to me.
selfish love to you, according, right?
But it's independent of you. So it's
But that's not what I'm saying. In from your perspective, you loving ice cream is selfish to you because it's to do with yourself, correct?
okay. Yes.
And if you had a wife and you had a child and your wife loved the child, you're still involved, but it has no love to do with you, correct?
Right. So if my wife loved ice cream, how is that different than her loving a child? They're both independent of me.
You're right.
Right.
Yep.
So
It's
how
still
how does
unselfish showing love between two other persons. Now, you tried to say that you could show unselfish love with the ice cream, and you said
right.
me loving ice cream would be unselfish love. But just in what we just went through, you've actually agreed that any love to you would be selfish love. And with
So
you in the mix, if your wife loved ice cream, something other than yourself, then it would be unselfish to you.
yes. So if my wife loved ice cream, that would be unselfish love. And so if only me and my wife and ice cream exists, my wife can love me and she can love ice cream. Therefore,
So
unselfish love.
but three things exist at that point,
Sure,
correct?
sure, sure. And so if she imagined ice cream existed, but it doesn't exist, she can still express unselfish love towards the imaginary ice cream, even though it doesn't exist, right?
No, I this is where I think you'd be reaching for straws, especially when we're talking about an all-knowing, all-loving God, because we're not just talking about this whole conversation just started from um, the Unitarian God and the Trinitarian God, correct? Not just a personal belief. So yeah, you can imagine anything, but I wouldn't say the same thing in God's mind. No.
Well, it's separate things. So like if you imagined ice cream will exist in the future or at some time once we create time, because we're outside of time at this point. Like you believe God is outside of space time, right? That's the typical position. If that's the
Sure.
case, then we're outside of space and time, and so beings don't exist, but they will exist. But since we're out of space time, we can love them in the future, right?
But you're
Or
not
love.
able to exhibit at that point in time because it's something that is a future tense.
Well, if remember we were saying if we can imagine it, then we can express these things. And so if we're going to be in the future, we're imagining it, right?
So again, though, this would depend on creation at that point, because if we have two persons that exist and then an imaginary thought of something that will exist in the future, it's still contingent upon that being created in the future, isn't it?
No, my love for that thing is independent of space time. So I know the thing will exist because I'm all knowing, and I experience a unselfish love towards that thing and not the other my brother guy. And I can seems like I can do that independent of it actually existing because I know it will exist.
Yeah, I just don't think that the argument actually works. It may for you, it just doesn't seem logical.
Why? Like you can love like you can love someone who you know is going to come into the future, right? So if I knew I was going to have a kid or something, and I was all knowing outside of space time, and I knew a kid was going to come, I would still feel love for that thing before it came, right?
Could you exhibit love for that child if the child didn't exist?
If I knew it was going to exist, yes.
How would you exhibit love for that child if the child didn't exist?
It's a feeling. So I have a feeling of love. It's like I'm a materialist, so I think
How are
love is
you
just a brain
exhibiting
thingy.
that feeling?
It's a brain thingy. It's an emotion like any other
So
emotion.
you're
You
not
can
exhibiting it, you're just thinking it.
those are synonyms.
Okay.
To exhibit love is to think it or to feel it. It's an emotion like any emotion.
Is to
It's
think it and then what?
to that's it. To think it, to feel it. Emotions are part of your brain. They're a thing, a brain state.
So you believe to exhibit something is just merely to think it.
Yes, love for
Okay,
emotions and brain states.
cool.
To exhibit an emotion or a brain state is to think it. Yes, those are
No,
synonyms.
well, I asked you how you would exhibit the love for a child that didn't exist, right? And you just said you would just merely think it. So you're saying that the definition of exhibiting something is just merely thinking it, correct?
No, to exhibit an emotion is to have the emotion.
And
that love is an emotion. So to exhibit love is to have the emotion of love, which is a brain state.
So just to think is exhibiting then, correct?
For emotions, yes, it's literally to
So
exhibit
when
a
you're
thought is to
so when
think.
you exhibit love for an unborn child, to just merely think it is
Yes,
exhibiting
you
it
are, you
in
are
your mind.
expressing your love for the unborn child.
You're expressing it how? If you're just thinking it.
That's so to exhibit a thought is to think the thought.
Well, to exhibit something, you would have to think of it, but there should also be something else involved with it, shouldn't it? It shouldn't be
What
just the thought of it, should it?
what do you mean?
Well, if you were to exhibit something, you should do more than just think about it, shouldn't you?
No. Exhibit is
Okay.
just like,
Oh, that's cool if that's your definition of exhibiting something.
well, exhibit is public display. That's what it means. So if you display your love for someone, means you can
A,
think it, you can
a
say it.
public display is
Yes.
exhibiting something.
Yes.
So you would have to think of something and then publicly display it to exhibit it, then correct?
No. So public display just means like it exists in reality. So you don't literally need to put it into a museum as an exhibit. To exhibit an emotion means you're having the emotion in reality. So that public display means it occurring in reality. So if you have a thought or a feeling of love in reality, it is being exhibited. So if a neutron bond is being exhibited, it means it's happening. It's happening in reality somewhere. That's all it means. So is the neutron bond being exhibited? Well, if it's happening in reality, yes. So if is love being exhibited, it's happening in reality, yes. So if you experience love in your brain as a thought or an emotion, it is being exhibited. So any bond, any expression of a bond, for them to be exhibited means they're happening.
Yeah, I just disagree with your definition of exhibiting. That's all.
Okay. How would you define it?
Well, I think that you would have to first think of it and then actually act on that thought that you had.
What do you mean?
You're just simply saying that you just simply need to think of something and that's exhibiting something,
Sure.
which I would disagree with that definition from what I said. That's all.
Why? Because that seems to
Because
undermine
of what I
your.
said.
No, that doesn't actually answer the question. So if you're saying that you need to think of it and then do something for it to count as love,
No, for it to count as exhibiting love, not just merely thinking it.
okay. So if that's some kind of a requirement, you need to exhibit love for it to exist. Is that what you're arguing? Because if you don't
No, you're
need.
trying to say that if you're going to exhibit something, you just merely need to think of it, correct?
Right, go back. So I'm saying, why did you bring up
And
exhibit at
I'm
all? So
thinking,
it's
and I'm telling you that the definition that you're using for
so,
exhibit, I don't accept because I
that's
don't
great.
think that you merely need to think it for
Yes,
it
I
to be
got
the
that part.
definition of
So
exhibit.
what I'm lost here is one, why did you bring up the word exhibit? Like it's got to be important to something, right? Like if it's completely irrelevant and you don't need it, well then there's no reason to bring it up. So it seems like you
And
brought it up
I never
because
said it wasn't relevant.
right. So I'm saying it must be relevant in some way, right? You need it. You need to exhibit love for it to exist, for it to be real or something, right?
Yeah, did you forget what I said at the start when with the
Answer the
Unitarian
question.
being and the
Why did you
Trinitarian
bring up
being?
exhibit?
Well, if you would have listened to my argumentation, you would have understood it from the start when I was talking about the
No,
Unitarian
that's
and the
not how.
Trinitarian
No, that's not
being.
how it works. Even if I listen to it, that doesn't mean I'm going to understand it the first time. Answer the question. Why did you bring up exhibit? It seems like you're arguing that
It
in
just seems
order
like
for
you're
it to
not being
be.
honest anymore, Tom.
Oh my God, the fact that you don't understand this is just painful to me. I'm
Yeah,
literally asking you for clarification,
I'm
and you
good with
can't
you
be
today,
more
Tom.
honest.
Have a wonderful
So,
day.
okay, wow. I think he just ran away because he just got crushed in the argument. So if you're saying you need to exhibit love for it to be real, and the Trinity exists, but they're not exhibiting their love by doing something, well, then it wouldn't be real love anymore. Like, oh, that's where I wanted to go to this. I wanted to. It seemed like it was a complete contradiction, and it was beautiful. It's a beautiful contradiction to his own position of if you must exhibit love for it to be real, well, then how is the Trinity exhibiting love for itself? And then if it must be exhibiting love at all times for it to be real, does that mean that Me not doing something right now means I don't love someone because I'm not exhibiting it. Oh, well.